So The Grinch is a thing, or How the Grinch Stole Christmas if you want its real title. We're deep into December now, and that means it's officially okay to post Decemberween stuff. I can't stand it when people start celebrating right after Spooktober. Like, I know I'm Canadian and we had Thanksgiving before Spooktober, but there's a full 54 days between Spooktober and Decemberween, which includes the whole month of November. December 1st gives you 25 days of that, and 26 if you're Dutch and you have second Christmas. Yeah, look that up. But back on track. Decemberween times are quickly approaching, and that means it's time for serious talk. So let's talk about The Grinch and break down my favorite Dr. Seuss book and character of all time, possibly even my favorite fictional character ever. When I say that, I'm referring to the book version of The Grinch, or the 1966 Christmas special version of The Grinch. Not that I don't like the 2000 Jim Carrey version. It's cool, I guess. And I have no idea about the 2018 Grinch. I like Frumious Bandersnatch, but I'm scared to see what the people behind Minions might have done to my hero. The Grinch is a total badass, and even though he is a villain, he is my hero, and the kind of person I aspire to be. And I'm not talking about the heart 3 sizes bigger version Grinch either. I'm talking about head not screwed on, shoes too tight, heart too small, motherfucking original Grinch, for the most part. And why, you may ask, is the Christmas-stealing Grinch my hero? Well, he's actually a really good role model. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines Grinch as a grumpy person who spoils the pleasure of others, especially Christmas spirit. See Killjoy. But this is a gross misrepresentation of the Grinch. Now I can just hear your questions about what my latest plan to steal Christmas is, and I honestly wish I had one, but that's not really what I'm referring to. What I mean by the Grinch is a good role model is based on 3 aspects of his character that can be observed throughout the story. And those things are his view of society and societal pressures, his intellect and resourcefulness, and his reaction to new and potentially contradictory ideologies when compared to his own. So today, I want to talk about how the Grinch stole Christmas. And I totally realize that I'm getting way too into my own reading and analysis of a fictional children's character, but I am 100% into this. Theodore Geisel, known as Ted to his friends, wrote and illustrated a huge number of very popular children's stories and parables. Of course, we all know him under his pen name Dr. Seuss, but as it turns out, it's apparently pronounced Seuss, like voice. It's German. I'm still gonna say Seuss. The Grinch is perhaps one of Seuss's most recognizable and if not most beloved then most infamous characters. The first use of the term Grinch was from a story in 1953 in which the Grinch was depicted as a sour-looking bird. 3 years later, the Grinch showed up in a longer poem called The Hubbub and the Grinch. This version of the Grinch was not recognizable as we know him today, and even his personality was different. He was more akin to that fast-talking salesman kind of character that Seuss often used, like the Onceler or the Cat in the Hat. Another 2 years passed, and finally, in 1957, Seuss published How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and bestowed upon the world the Grinch as we know him today. This book and this version of the Grinch proved to be super popular, and in 1966 a 20-minute short film was created as a direct translation of the book to the screen. The book and the short movie are the definitive version of the Grinch. Indisputable fact.
I will die on that hill!
The movie was animated by the venerated Chuck Jones of Bugs Bunny fame, and the narration and iconic voice of the Grinch was provided by Boris Karloff. Karloff was most famous for his work in horror movies, particularly the most popular and lasting version of Frankenstein's monster, so his voice had a certain amount of menace and intensity that he lent to the telling of the story and in bringing the character of the Grinch to life. He used this to great effect for some truly bone-chilling moments.
I must find some way to keep Christmas from coming.
But he also softened it when the story called for it.
Little Cindy Lou, who was no more than 2.
Chuck Jones' animation is incredible. It feels like it jumped off the page onto the screen and began moving. It's so well done, and the rough quality to the details makes the setting and story feel like it's a storybook being read aloud. And let's not forget that this was all hand-drawn by a very small team. After this, the only other canonical version of the Grinch penned by Seuss was when enough support for the character reached him and he created another animated short in 1977 called Halloween is Grinch Night. It's less well known and serves as a prequel to the original story, but maybe I'll save that one for next Spooktober so I can once again avoid talking about and watching another scary movie. In 1982, Seuss helped produce a children's movie called The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat as a kind of crossover for those two characters. In the 90s, the Grinch appeared in a few episodes as a puppet version of himself in a Nick Jr. show about Dr. Seuss characters. There was also a Grinch musical that ran on Broadway during this time. Interestingly though, it appears that that musical had no direct effect on the writing or production of the 2000 live-action full-length feature movie of The Grinch. Making it full-length was a mistake, I think. This movie is way funny at times.
Santa, what's Christmas really about?
Vengeance!
But, well, this is a choice. He also had a minor role in Seussical the Musical, which is just uncalled for and an insult. Minor character? Please. The Grinch is the main character or he's not in it at all. Lastly is the 2018 Illumination movie, which I have nothing to say about because I haven't seen it. Spoiler warning, but if you really haven't seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas, shame on you. Go find it online and take the 20 minutes to watch it. You can thank me later. The story revolves around the Who's down in Whoville and the surrounding area as they're gearing up for Christmas. Up on a nearby mountain, the Grinch is upset by Christmas and all of the lights, noise, sound, and fun that the Who's will have while playing with their new toys. To top it all off, on Christmas Day, they will get together and sing, and this, most of all, pisses the Grinch off. I mean, who can blame him? Christmas music is just the worst. Way too saccharine. To prevent this, the Grinch plans to steal Christmas. He sneaks his way into Whoville and steals everything and anything that might have any relation to Christmas. Not even those mice are going to be able to celebrate. And upon returning to his mountain to watch and rejoice in the anguish of the Who's stolen Christmas, the Grinch hears them begin to sing anyway. He realizes that somehow he hadn't managed to stop Christmas at all, and understands that Christmas is a sort of state of mind and being rather than the gifts and toys that are exchanged. So the Grinch goes down the mountain and gives all the stolen shit back and decides that he could give this whole Christmas thing a try, and so he chills with the Who's and celebrates Christmas with them. Of course, this summary doesn't do the story justice at all. For starters, there's not enough rhyming, but brevity was the goal, not whimsy. Immediately, we can see that the Grinch is an outcast in Who's society. This is apparent by his actual outsider point of view geographically in regards to Whoville, but also his outlook towards Christmas seems to be wholly different from any of the Who's. While they're getting psyched up for Christmas, the Grinch is uninterested. The ultimate goal of the story is to teach the meaning of Christmas as the joy and companionship of the season and the celebration of togetherness. This becomes obvious when Christmas comes, even though all the paraphernalia was missing.
It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags.
But from the get-go, the Grinch was pretty anti-consumerist. This may be because he was irritated at the prospect of all the rampant noise and light pollution caused by the new and shiny things that the Who's will all use, but it's worth pointing out. The 2000 live-action movie played with this consumerist angle a bit more, but I certainly think that it was there in the original. But I think what makes the Grinch more interesting as a character isn't just his anti-consumerist ideas as an outsider, but his steadfastness and staunch disinterest in all things Christmas. This plays into the consumerism, as the Grinch thinks Christmas is intrinsically linked to the stuff associated with it, but there's a distinction here because even though all of the people around the Grinch feel one way about something, the Grinch is not so easily swayed. He does not give in to societal pressure to like Christmas, and we can infer from the book that this comes every year.
Why, for 53 years I put up with it now.
And every year the Who's do the same thing, but the Grinch is unwavering. Cheeriness and joy are not going to change the Grinch's mind. And I have to admire someone who's willing to forego happiness because they're unwilling to give up their values and potentially what the truth is. Happiness can be a strong draw, and Christmas is all about that joy. I know it's mentioned in several of the songs, so it must be true. But standing up for what you believe in spite of what everyone else says is important, and it might make you unpopular like the Grinch is, but it's still really important to do and think about. The second reason the Grinch is my hero has to do with his intelligence and resourcefulness. The Grinch has a hypothesis that Christmas will not come if there's no Christmas stuff to bring it about, and so the Grinch sets out to test his hypothesis. If there's no stuff, there will be no Christmas. We can assume that past years work as a kind of control, and then this Christmas when the stuff is stolen, something will change. This is a solid framework, and something does change. Christmas comes without the stuff, which proves that the Grinch's hypothesis is wrong. But before we can carry on with that train of thought, I just want to mention that the means of stealing all the Christmas stuff is also ingenious. The Grinch uses all of his cunning to make himself look like Santa and Max like a reindeer. He plays a kind of negative Santa Claus. He makes costumes and even uses Santa's delivery methods in reverse. He slinks, he slunks,
Slunk.
and he uses vacuums and all of his best techniques for his Grinchy plan. And this is evidently super effective based on the barren homes he leaves behind. But to top it off, the Grinch shows his quick thinking when he's accosted by Cindy Lou who, thinking he is Santa, asks him why he's taking her tree. So clearly on some level his costume worked, because she thought he was Santa. Or she's severely myopic and half asleep, but I choose to believe it's the costume. The Grinch only hesitates for a moment before replying with a well thought up and plausible lie that he is fixing the tree.
What an excellent Grinchy trick to play.
And it works. This could be because Cindy Lou Who is no more than 2, but I again choose to believe in the Grinch's intellectual prowess. He also puts her back to bed, which I like because it shows that the Grinch might work towards the Who's misfortune and misery, but he's not interested in actively hurting them. So the Grinch takes his stolen treasure all the way up to the top of Mount Crumpet and waits for the sounds of boo-hooing from the Who's, but there is no such sound. Instead, the Who's begin singing anyway. Christmas had come. The missing stuff didn't stop Christmas at all, and so the Grinch puzzles and puzzles over this conundrum, until he finally realizes what is the third and final and most important reason that the Grinch is my hero, and the lesson that everyone should learn from the Grinch, and that is, when faced with an alternative to what he believes and no way to reconcile the facts with his own ideology, the Grinch changes his mind. Not only that, but he also actively becomes an advocate for the opposite point of view. In the story, this is presented as his heart-growing 3 sizes, which means it was still 1 size too large. You should probably see a doctor about that. The takeaway here is that the Grinch's theory of stealing Christmas paraphernalia to stop Christmas from happening was wrong. Christmas is not about the stuff. When the Grinch realizes this, he's faced with the fact that he was wrong. There's this phenomenon in psychology called the Backfire Effect, and you can see it play out all the time. You may have even done this yourself without knowing, but it's worth being aware of. Essentially, the Backfire Effect is what happens when someone is presented with facts about the world, and I mean true factual evidence that is contrary to one's ideology, and usually in regards to the political. Instead of these facts changing the minds of individuals, people are more likely to actually double down on their misconceptions. Correcting someone can actually cause them to become more entrenched in something that is inaccurate because they don't want to change their mind or have to rethink their personal identity. But not the Grinch. This might be because he came to the conclusion on his own after witnessing the evidence of an outcome that he caused, but he chooses to correct his misconception about Christmas. Christmas must be about something more. Then to top it off, and what makes him truly the best, the Grinch brings all the stuff back and begins to really embrace and share Christmas. He puts himself into the center of it and becomes a great proponent for all things Christmas. He even carves the roast beast, and wait, how many legs that thing got? I mean, it still looks pretty tasty. It is the Grinch's cynicism towards the way others see things, his intelligence and ingenuity, but most of all his willingness to understand, change, and even admit his own mistakes in his actions and ideologies that make the Grinch an absolute unit. He is able to be the villain and hero of his own story. He is wickedly smart, and he can admit when he's wrong. The last one is hard to do. I spent a lot of time being opinionated. I have a whole channel based on extolling my opinions. And that means sometimes those opinions are wrong, and I need to admit that. It's nice to see a fictional character that is willing to admit and work towards self-actualization. It's nice that others forgive him too, because that's exactly what this time of year is about. Forgiveness when others do something wrong. So just go ahead and admit when you're wrong, and see how forgiving other people really are. And that is why How the Grinch Stole Christmas is the best story and not even really about Christmas, and why the Grinch is absolutely the coolest character ever.
Decemberween is around the bend, so find an old friend and make amends. And when they cry out that you were wrong, ask for forgiveness and be friends before long. And if they ask why the change of view, just flash that smile and say, the Grinch sent you. Happy Decemberween.
Thanks so much for joining me on that Decemberween episode. The Grinch really is my favorite fictional character, and it's a pleasure to talk about him. So if you can, like and subscribe, and share that around like you're stealing Christmas from a bunch of unwitting Who's. And feel free to stick around for more awesome video essays and our weekly podcast right here on Cinemaster's Ultimate Timeline.